The emergency beacon had been screaming into the void for 3 weeks. Nobody expected an answer. Commander Rail pressed his four-fingered hand against the observation window, watching another transport ship limp into the station, trailing debris and bodies. The harvesters had hit the agricultural colonies on Velris Prime 6 hours ago. 15 million dead. 15 million dissolved into organic slurry to feed those things. His communication officer, a young female named Sierra, looked up from her console with eyes that reflected too much blue light. Her species cried blue. "Commander, we have an incoming transmission. Unknown origin. Sector 447. Rail felt his chest plates tighten. Sector 447 was dead space. Every probe they had sent there had returned data showing a world so hostile that it killed the probes themselves. Gravity too strong, atmosphere too corrosive, temperature swings that would crack hull plating. Yet the probes had also detected structures, cities, and something moving. "Put it through," Rail said. The voice that came through the speakers was wrong, too deep, too rough, like gravel scraping against metal. "This is Admiral Elizabeth Wilson of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. What do you need?" Sierra made a choking sound. Rail stood frozen. "Earth, the death world, and they had a fleet." "Admiral Wilson," Rail managed, forcing his voice to remain steady. "We are the Galactic Coalition. We face extinction from a hostile force we call the Harvesters. They consume all biological matter. We cannot stop them. Our weapons adapt too slowly. They learn faster than we do." Silence filled the channel for 3 heartbeats. Then that grinding voice returned. "Send us everything you have on them. Attack patterns, biology, weaknesses. We will be there in 48 hours. The transmission cut. Sierra stared at her console. "Commander, I am reading multiple FTL signatures emerging at the edge of our sensor range. 12 capital ships, 64 smaller vessels. They are not like anything in our database." Rail pulled up the visual feed. The human ships looked wrong. No smooth curves, no elegant designs. They were angular and brutal, covered in armor plating that seemed excessive for space travel. Each vessel bristled with weapons. So many weapons. "They cannot be serious," Sierra whispered. "Those designs are inefficient. The armor adds mass. The weapons would drain power reserves in any sustained fight." But Rail was looking at something else in the scan data. The crew manifests were public broadcasts, standard first contact protocol. He pulled up the biological information and felt his stomach drop. Humans breathed oxygen like many species, but they breathed it at a concentration that would cause cellular damage to most races. Their world had 1.3 times standard gravity. They could survive temperature ranges from freezing to boiling. Their bones were dense. Their muscles were redundant systems layered over redundant systems. And their brain chemistry included something the database flagged in red: aggressive persistence. "Sierra," Rail said quietly, "send word to the Council. Tell them the reinforcements have arrived, and tell them to be very, very careful." The human fleet arrived exactly 48 hours later, as promised. Rail met them in the diplomatic bay with Ambassador Triss, whose amphibious species was known for peaceful negotiation. Triss believed all conflicts could be resolved through understanding. Rail hoped she was right, because looking at the data, picking a fight with these creatures would be suicide. Admiral Wilson was the first through the airlock. She was tall, nearly 2 meters, with skin darker than space and eyes that tracked movement like a predator. Behind her came 6 more humans, all wearing dark uniforms with strange insignias. They moved with purpose, each step deliberate and controlled. Triss stepped forward, extending her webbed hand in the universal gesture of peace. "Admiral Wilson, welcome to Coalition space. We are grateful for your response to our plea. We understand this must be frightening for your people, traveling so far from home to face an unknown threat." Wilson looked at Triss for a moment, then did something that made every coalition member in the room step back. She smiled. Her lips pulled back to reveal flat teeth designed for grinding and sharp canines designed for tearing. It was a threat display. It had to be. "Frightening," Wilson said, and Rail realized she was not threatening them. She was amused. "Ambassador, we have been listening to your broadcasts for the past 3 weeks. We have analyzed every battle record you transmitted. This harvester force has destroyed 47 of your colony worlds. You have lost 6 billion citizens. Your fleets retreat every time they encounter resistance." "Yes," Triss said, her voice shaking slightly. "They are unstoppable. They adapt to our weapons within minutes. They feel no fear. They cannot be reasoned with." Wilson nodded slowly. "You have been fighting them for 8 months. In that time, you have destroyed approximately 4,000 harvester drones and 0 command ships. Is that correct?" Rail answered, "That is correct, Admiral. We believe their command ships are hidden. We cannot find them." "We found them," Wilson said. 3 hours ago, we launched deep space reconnaissance into the sectors where your colonies were destroyed. We tracked their resource movements back to 6 hive worlds. Would you like us to eliminate them?" The room fell silent. Sierra, who had been recording the meeting, dropped her data pad. Triss opened her mouth, but no words emerged. Rail felt his legs weaken. "You want to attack their home worlds?" Rail finally asked. "Admiral, we have no data on their defenses. The casualties would be catastrophic. We must find another way." Wilson looked at him with those predator eyes. "Commander, you called for reinforcements. We are here. Now point us at the enemy." Something in her voice made Rail understand. These were not prey species seeking protection. These were hunters offering to hunt. Sergeant Daniel Hayes had been in worse places than the ruins of Colony 7, but not by much. The atmosphere was thick with spores from the harvester feeding process, and his helmet sensors were screaming warnings about toxicity levels that would kill most species in under 10 minutes. His squad had been breathing it for 2 hours. "Contact front," Private Lewis said over the comm, her voice calm despite the warning alerts. 3 drones, 30 meters. Hayes brought up his rifle and sighted through the scope. The harvesters looked like nightmares made flesh. 4 meters tall, covered in chitinous plates that shifted colors to match their surroundings. Their limbs ended in claws that could slice through steel, and their mouths were designed to inject digestive enzymes into living prey. The coalition briefing had called them unstoppable. Hayes called them targets. "Luis Rodriguez, take the flanks. Kim, you are on overwatch. I want suppressing fire on my mark." Hayes kept his voice level professional. This was just another day, just another enemy. Mark. The squad opened fire. Kinetic rounds tore into the lead harvester, and it shrieked. The sound was designed to trigger fear responses in most prey species, a frequency that caused panic and paralysis. Hayes felt it wash over him like cold water. Interesting, but not effective. The harvester charged, adapting its armor to deflect the incoming rounds. It was fast, faster than the briefings had indicated. But Hayes had been fighting since he was old enough to hold a weapon, and he knew that speed without strategy was just momentum waiting to be redirected. "Lewis, go low," he snapped. Lewis dropped and rolled under the harvester's charge, her combat knife extended. She sliced through the softer joint at its leg as she passed. The creature stumbled, and Hayes put 3 rounds through its head at close range. It dissolved into the same organic slurry it used to consume its victims. The other 2 harvesters split up, trying to flank. Coalition forces would have retreated at this point. The briefing said so. When harvesters adapted and flanked, you fell back to secondary positions and called for air support. Hayes charged the left harvester while Rodriguez engaged the right. His shoulder hit the creature's center mass with enough force to crack its chest plate. They went down together, and Hayes showed it what close-quarters combat meant to a human. Elbows, knees, headbutts. His combat knife found the gaps in its armor that evolution had created for flexibility. "Sergeant, you have more inbound," Kim called from her elevated position. "Looks like 15. They are converging on your position." "Outstanding," Hayes said, pulling his sidearm and putting 2 rounds into the harvester's skull. "Finally, a fair fight." The next wave hit them 40 seconds later, but Hayes had used those 40 seconds to position his squad in a defensive triangle with overlapping fields of fire. The harvesters came in fast, expecting easy prey. They found something else. Rodriguez had rigged his last 2 grenades to a proximity mine. When the lead harvesters triggered it, the explosion took down 4 of them. Lewis had climbed to a higher position and was dropping them with precise headshots. Kim was laying down suppressing fire that forced them to bunch up, making them easier targets. And Hayes was in the middle of it all, doing what humans did best, adapting faster than the enemy. He noticed that the harvesters flinched when hit with fire. Their armor adapted to kinetic rounds and energy weapons, but fire was something they had not encountered. Hayes grabbed a damaged power cell from his belt and threw it into a pool of harvester slurry. The cell ruptured and ignited the organic material. The harvesters screamed and retreated from the flames. "Lewis, incendiary rounds," Hayes ordered. "Everyone switch now." The squad loaded their secondary magazines, the ones filled with explosive rounds designed to create fire. The harvesters had adapted to standard ammunition. They had not adapted to burning. The tide turned in seconds. The creatures that had destroyed entire civilizations were running from 4 humans with fire. Hayes felt no satisfaction. This was analysis, data collection, understanding the enemy. The coalition had been fighting these things wrong. They used precision and strategy. Humans used everything. When the last harvester fell, Hayes checked his squad. Rodriguez had a torn suit, but the emergency seal had held. Lewis had used 80% of her ammunition. Kim was uninjured but breathing hard from the adrenaline dump. They were all functional. "Command, this is Ground Team 1, Hayes reported. "We have engaged and eliminated 19 harvester drones with 0 casualties, confirming that fire is an effective weapon. They cannot adapt fast enough to combustion." The voice that responded was not human. It was Commander Rail, the Insectoid Coalition officer who had been monitoring the mission. "Sergeant Hayes, your report indicates you engaged 19 harvesters in close combat. The standard coalition protocol is to retreat when facing more than 2. "Standard coalition protocol gets people killed," Hayes replied. "These things are dangerous, Commander, but they are not unstoppable. They are just animals that nobody has bothered to hunt properly." Silence on the channel. Then Admiral Wilson's voice cut through. "Good work, Sergeant. Collect samples and return to base. We need to know everything about these creatures." Hayes signaled his squad to move out. Rodriguez was already cutting pieces from the nearest harvester corpse, sealing them in containment bags. Lewis was documenting everything with her helmet camera. Kim was watching their perimeter, because good soldiers never assumed the fight was over. As they moved through the ruins, Hayes saw coalition observers in the distance. They had been watching the fight through drones. He wondered what they thought, seeing 4 humans do what their armies could not. He wondered if they understood yet. Humans did not evolve on a kind world. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. And they had learned that the best defense was to become something worse than anything trying to eat them. The harvesters were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Dr. Patricia Lane stared at the harvester specimen strapped to the examination table and felt nothing but curiosity. The creature was still alive, its chest plates rising and falling with each breath. Its eyes, all 6 of them, tracked her movements with what the Coalition scientists called malevolent intelligence. The Coalition research team stood behind reinforced glass, watching with obvious fear. Dr. Kren, the lead xenobiologist, had his breathing apparatus working overtime. His species was herbivorous, prey animals who had achieved sentience through cooperation and hiding. The idea of studying a predator this dangerous was against everything in his evolutionary programming. "Dr. Lane," Kren said through the intercom, his voice warbling with stress. "Perhaps we should wait for additional security measures. This specimen is capable of dissolving organic matter. If it breaks free, you will die in approximately 15 seconds." Patricia pulled on her examination gloves and smiled. "Then I better work fast." She approached the harvester with the same energy she had used to study great white sharks back on Earth. Yes, it was dangerous. Yes, it could kill her. But fear was just chemistry, and chemistry could be controlled. She had injected herself with a mild anxiolytic before entering the room. Not enough to dull her reactions, just enough to keep her hands steady. The harvester lunged against its restraints, mandibles opening to spray digestive enzymes. Patricia had anticipated this. She stepped to the side, and the spray hit the collection tray she had positioned. The enzymes hissed as they ate through the metal, but she was already taking samples with a long-handled tool. "Fascinating," she said, sealing the samples. "The enzymatic breakdown occurs in two stages. First, a base compound weakens molecular bonds. Second, an acid catalyst completes the dissolution. Kren, are you recording this?" "Yes, Dr. Lane, but I must insist you exit the examination room immediately. The specimen is displaying aggressive behavior." Patricia moved closer to the harvester, examining its eyes. "All predators display aggressive behavior when restrained. That is basic stress response. What I want to know is whether this aggression is instinctive or calculated." She held up a data pad showing images of different species. The harvester's eyes did not track them. She switched to images of coalition military vessels. Still no response. Then she displayed an image of a human soldier, and the harvester recoiled. "Oh, that is interesting," Patricia said, making notes. "It recognizes humans as a threat. Kren, how long has this specimen been in captivity?" "4 hours, Dr. Lane. And in those 4 hours, it has already associated humans with danger. Their learning adaptation is remarkable. No wonder they have been so successful against coalition forces. They learn your patterns and exploit them." She circled the examination table, examining the creature from every angle. Its armor plates were organic, grown from the same material it used to consume prey. Its limbs were multi-jointed, allowing for movement in ways that would snap a human spine. But Patricia was not looking at what made it strong. She was looking for what made it vulnerable. "Kren, what is the temperature in this room?" 22 degrees Celsius, Dr. Lane. Standard laboratory environment." Patricia adjusted the environmental controls. The temperature dropped to 10 degrees. The harvester's movement slowed. She raised it to 35 degrees. The creature became more active, almost frantic. "Temperature sensitivity," she noted. "They operate optimally in warm environments. Cold slows their metabolic processes. Heat increases aggression but decreases coordination. File that under exploitable weaknesses." "Dr. Lane, this is unprecedented. How are you not afraid?" Patricia looked at the harvester, then at the coalition scientists watching her. "Fear is an evolutionary tool, Kren. It keeps prey animals alive by making them run from danger. But humans are not prey animals. We are persistence hunters. Our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to study what we hunt, to understand it, to find its weaknesses and exploit them." She picked up a surgical laser and made a small incision in the harvester's armor. Green fluid leaked out. The creature thrashed, but the restraints held. Patricia collected the fluid sample and ran it through the analyzer. "Their circulatory system is decentralized," she said, reading the results. "Multiple hearts, multiple filtration organs. That is why they are so hard to kill with conventional weapons. You would need to cause catastrophic damage to multiple systems simultaneously." Kren was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since the humans arrived. "Dr. Lane, why are you helping us? Your species has no obligation to the Coalition. We are strangers, yet you risk your life to study our enemy." Patricia looked up from her analysis. "Because that is what humans do, Kren. We protect, we study, we solve problems. Your people evolved to avoid danger. My people evolved to confront it. You see a monster, I see a puzzle, and I am very good at solving puzzles." She spent the next 3 hours conducting tests that made the Coalition scientists physically ill to watch. She exposed the harvester to different stimuli, mapped its nervous system, analyzed its digestive processes, and documented every reaction. By the end, she had compiled a comprehensive biological profile. "Report for Admiral Wilson," Patricia said, transmitting her findings. "Harvesters are ambush predators adapted for warm, humid environments. They rely on fear and overwhelming force. Weaknesses include temperature sensitivity, decentralized biology requiring multiple trauma points, and complete lack of experience with prey that fights back. Recommendation: stop treating them like an unstoppable force and start treating them like an invasive species that needs to be eradicated." She left the examination room, pulled off her gloves, and finally allowed herself to feel the adrenaline crash. Her hands shook slightly. Her heart rate was elevated, but she had done her job. She had turned the unknown into the known. Kren approached her, his breathing apparatus still working hard. "Dr. Lane, I have never seen anyone face a harvester with such calm. Your species is terrifying." Patricia smiled. "Only to our enemies, Kren, only to our enemies." The war room fell silent as Admiral Wilson laid out her plan. The holographic display showed 6 star systems, each one marked with red indicators showing harvester hive worlds. The Coalition High Command watched with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Ambassador Triss spoke first, her voice trembling. "Admiral, you are proposing a simultaneous assault on all 6 hive worlds. Our projections indicate casualties in the millions. We would lose half our fleet in the first wave alone." Wilson did not look away from the display. "Your projections are based on Coalition combat doctrine. Defend, retreat, minimize casualties. That strategy has cost you 6 billion lives in 8 months. My strategy will cost lives in days, but it will end the war." General Horvath, a massive quadruped whose species had fought in 3 galactic conflicts, shook his head. "Admiral, I respect your people's courage, but courage alone cannot overcome superior numbers. The harvesters have fortified these worlds. They know we are coming." "Good," Wilson said. "Let them know, let them prepare, it will not matter." Rail studied the human admiral, trying to understand her thinking. Every instinct in his body screamed that this plan was suicide. But the humans had already done things the Coalition thought impossible. They had hunted harvesters on foot. They had studied them without fear. They had turned a war of extinction into a war of extermination. "Explain your reasoning, Admiral," Rail said. "Help us understand." Wilson expanded the display, showing detailed tactical overlays. "The harvesters fight like every successful predator species. They use fear, overwhelming force, and adaptation. They expect prey to run. When prey runs, they chase. When prey hides, they search. But they have never faced prey that hunts them back." She highlighted the first hive world. "This is their primary breeding facility. They produce drones here. If we destroy it, we cut their reinforcement capability by 60%. The second world appeared. "This is their resource processing center. They bring all consumed organic matter here for conversion. Destroy it and they starve." One by one, she explained each target. The Coalition leaders listened, and slowly their expressions changed from horror to something else. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of it. "You are describing total warfare," Horvath said quietly. "Not defense, annihilation." "Yes," Wilson agreed, "because anything less gives them time to adapt. The harvesters have survived by learning faster than their prey. We will move faster than they can learn." Triss stood, her webbed hands clasped together. "Admiral Wilson, I must ask you something personal. Why are you willing to sacrifice so much for people you just met? We are not your allies. We are barely even acquaintances. Yet you propose to send your people into battles where many will die." Wilson was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer but somehow harder. "Ambassador, my species has a saying, 'Evil triumphs when good people do nothing.' We received your distress call. We heard 6 billion people screaming for help. If we had ignored that call, if we had stayed safe on Earth while you burned, then we would not deserve to call ourselves civilized." She turned to face the full council. "Yes, we are predators. Yes, we evolved on a world that tried to kill us. Yes, we are violent and aggressive and dangerous. But we are also protective. We form bonds with strangers. We risk our lives for people we have never met. That is what makes us human, not our weapons or our tactics or our refusal to surrender. Our humanity is in our choice to stand between the innocent and the monsters." The room was absolutely silent. Then Rael stood. "Admiral, the Coalition fleet is yours to command. We will follow your lead." One by one, the other commanders stood. Horvath, Triss, even Kren, the peaceful scientist who had spent his whole life avoiding violence. They all stood. Wilson nodded once, "Then let us begin." The fleet mobilized within 6 hours. Human warships led each strike force, with Coalition vessels in support roles. The humans had shared their tactical data, their weapon modifications, their hard-won knowledge from 2 weeks of fighting. The Coalition forces had never trained like this, never moved with such purpose. Private Lewis sat in the troop carrier headed for Hive World 3, checking her equipment for the 4th time. Beside her sat Pip, a young Coalition soldier whose species resembled Earth birds. He was terrified. His feathers were ruffled, his breathing rapid. "First combat drop?" Lewis asked. Pip nodded, unable to speak. Lewis handed him a protein bar. "Eat this. Low blood sugar makes fear worse." "How are you not afraid?" Pip managed to ask. Lewis smiled, but it was not the predatory smile that scared Coalition species. It was warm, kind. "I am scared, Pip. Fear is what keeps you alive. But I trained for this. I know my job. And I know that Sergeant Hayes will lead us through it. Trust your training, trust your team. And remember that you are not alone." Pip took the protein bar with shaking hands. "Thank you, Private Lewis." "Call me Jane," Lewis said. "We are about to go through hell together. Might as well be friends." The carrier shook as it entered the atmosphere of Hive World 3. Outside, human fighters were engaging harvester defense drones. Explosions lit up the sky. The war had truly begun. Pip looked at Jane and saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Not just courage, not just determination. It was certainty. The absolute certainty that no matter how bad things got, humans would not break, would not run, would not stop until every last harvester was dead. For the first time since the war began, Pip thought they might actually win. The carrier touched down and the doors opened to hell. But this time, hell had company, and hell was going to lose. The surface of Hive World 3 was worse than any nightmare the Coalition had imagined. The ground was not soil but compressed organic matter, the remains of billions of consumed beings. The air was thick with spores designed to break down living tissue. And everywhere, thousands of harvesters waited in their hive structures that stretched into the toxic sky. Sergeant Hayes hit the ground running. His boots sank into the soft surface, and he heard the organic material trying to digest them. The suit held. Earth engineering at its finest, built to withstand environments that would kill other species in seconds. "Squad, form up," Hayes ordered. "Lewis, take point. Rodriguez, watch our 6. Pip, stay close to me." The Coalition soldier stumbled as he landed, his lighter gravity adaptation making the landing awkward. But he recovered quickly, raising his weapon as Hayes had taught him during the flight down. His feathers were still ruffled with fear, but his hands were steady now. The harvesters came in waves. They poured from the hive structures like water, thousands of them, all moving with coordinated intelligence. This was their home, their breeding ground, and they were defending it with everything they had. "Contact at 50 meters, Lewis called out. "Multiple targets, too many to count." "Then we do not count," Hayes replied. "We just shoot." The battle became a blur of motion and fire. The humans moved through the harvester forces like a scalpel through flesh, cutting deep, never stopping. Rodriguez threw grenades into the hive openings, collapsing the entrances and trapping harvesters inside. Lewis picked off the larger drones with precision shots that would have been impossible for most species, her enhanced vision and steady hands making every shot count. And Hayes led from the front, always moving forward, always pushing deeper into enemy territory. Pip followed, trying to match their pace. He saw a harvester charging toward Rodriguez from the side. His training kicked in. He fired and the creature fell. Rodriguez glanced back, nodded once and kept moving. "Good shot, Pip," Hayes said over the comm. "Keep it up." Those 3 words changed something in Pip. He was not just following anymore. He was fighting. He was part of the team. Above them, the sky erupted with light as human warships engaged the harvester defense platforms. Captain Reed commanded the orbital assault from the bridge of the destroyer Relentless. Her ship had taken heavy damage in the first wave, but she kept fighting. The harvester platforms were adapting to their weapons, but Reed had learned from Dr. Lane's research. "Switch to thermal rounds," Reed ordered. "Target their cooling systems." The harvesters had adapted to kinetic weapons and energy weapons. They had not adapted to fire and heat because those were environmental factors, not weapons. Their cooling systems were external, designed to regulate temperature in their organic technology. Target those, and the platforms overheated. One by one, the defense platforms failed. The human fleet pushed through, and coalition ships followed, amazed at what they were witnessing. The impossible was becoming possible. On the ground, Hayes had reached the central hive structure. It was massive, a tower of compressed organic matter and harvester technology that reached into the clouds. This was where they bred, where they grew their drones, where they coordinated their attacks. "Command, this is Ground Team 1, Hayes reported. "We are at the primary target, setting charges now." "Negative, Sergeant," Admiral Wilson's voice cut through. "We have a better option. Dr. Lane has analyzed the hive structure. There is a central processing node. If you can reach it and upload this virus, we can turn their own technology against them." Hayes looked at the tower, then at his squad. Lewis was down to 30% ammunition. Rodriguez had taken a hit to his leg and was limping. Pip was exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination. They were all at their limits. "How far in do we need to go?" Hayes asked. "Approximately 400 meters, vertical climb, through active harvester forces." Hayes smiled. "Outstanding, we love a challenge." They went in. The inside of the hive was a maze of organic corridors that pulsed with life. Harvesters attacked from every angle, but the squad had learned their patterns. Every battle taught them something new. Every fight made them better. Pip saved Lewis from a harvester that dropped from above. Lewis returned the favor 30 seconds later when 2 more attacked from a side passage. Rodriguez cleared a path with his last grenades, and Hayes led them through the smoke and fire. They reached the central node after 20 minutes of fighting that felt like 20 hours. It was a massive organic computer, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Hayes pulled out the data drive Dr. Lane had prepared and jammed it into the nearest interface point. The virus uploaded in seconds, then the screaming started. Every harvester in the hive shrieked at once. Their coordinated intelligence turned against them, the virus rewriting their base programming. They attacked each other. They attacked the hive structure itself. They tore themselves apart in confused rage. "Time to leave," Hayes said calmly. The squad ran. Behind them, the hive was collapsing, harvesters dying by the thousands as their own biology turned against them. They made it to the extraction point just as the entire structure imploded. The transport lifted off, and Pip looked down at the burning hive world. Human fighters were still engaging targets, but the battle was won. The harvesters were broken. He looked at Hayes, at Lewis, at Rodriguez. These humans who had shown him what real courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. "Thank you," Pip said quietly, "for teaching me to fight." Hayes put a hand on his shoulder. "You always knew how to fight, Pip. We just showed you that you were stronger than you thought. That is what humans do. We help others find their strength." 6 months after the war ended, Commander Rail stood in the observation deck of Unity Station and watched human engineers rebuild what the harvesters had destroyed. They worked in shifts that would kill most species from exhaustion alone. 20 hours on, 4 hours off. They never complained. They never stopped. Below, on the restored surface of Velris Prime, human agricultural specialists were teaching coalition farmers how to reclaim the poisoned soil. Dr. Lane was there, running soil analysis with the same intense focus she had used to study harvester biology. She had stayed after the war ended, saying there was still work to do. They all stayed, every single human. Rail had asked Admiral Wilson about it during one of their strategy meetings. "Admiral, the war is over. Your people can go home. Why do they remain?" Wilson had looked at him with those predator eyes that no longer frightened him. "Because rebuilding is part of fighting, Commander. We do not just break things. We fix them too." Now watching them work, Rail finally understood. Humans were not just warriors. They were protectors. The two concepts were inseparable in their culture. You fought to protect, and you protected by building. The Galactic Council was meeting today. The topic was human membership in the coalition. It had been delayed for months, the debate fierce and complicated. Some species feared humans. Others worshipped them. Most were simply confused by them. Rail made his way to the council chambers, where ambassadors from 47 species were gathering. Ambassador Triss was already there, organizing her notes. She had changed since the war. Her species was still peaceful, still devoted to diplomacy, but now she understood that peace sometimes required the capacity for violence. The council came to order, and High Chancellor Vorn called the session to begin. He was old, his scales dulled with age, but his voice still carried authority. "We gather to discuss humanity's place in the coalition," Vorn began. "They answered our call for help. They fought beside us. They bled for us. But the question remains, what are they? And can we coexist with them?" General Horvath stood. "I have fought in 3 wars. I have seen bravery and cowardice. I have seen species fight for survival and species fight for conquest. Humans are different. They fight for others. On Hive World 5, I watched a human squad defend a coalition medical transport for 6 hours against overwhelming odds. They lost 4 soldiers, but the transport survived. That is who they are." Dr. Kren spoke next. "I was terrified of humans when they arrived, their biology, their psychology. Everything about them was designed for violence, but Dr. Lane taught me something important. Violence is a tool, compassion is a choice. Humans choose compassion, they choose to protect, they choose to build. Their capacity for violence makes that choice meaningful." One by one, the council members spoke. Some voiced fear, some voiced gratitude. All agreed that humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Then Admiral Wilson was invited to speak. She walked to the center of the chamber and every eye followed her. She wore her dress uniform, the one with medals from battles the coalition had never heard of. Each medal represented a war, a conflict, a moment where humanity had chosen to fight. "Honored council members," Wilson began, "I will not pretend that humanity is not dangerous. We are apex predators from a world that tried to kill us every day. We evolved through violence and competition. We carry that legacy in our DNA. She paused, letting that truth settle. But we also evolved through cooperation, through empathy, through the choice to protect the weak instead of preying on them. Yes, we are monsters, but we are monsters who choose to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Her voice grew stronger. You called for reinforcements. You got us. You got our weapons, our tactics, our willingness to die for strangers. But you also got our doctors, our engineers, our teachers. You got the whole package, the capacity for great violence and great compassion. You cannot have one without the other. Wilson looked at each council member. The question before you is not whether we are dangerous. We are. The question is whether you trust us, whether you believe that we will use our strength to protect rather than to dominate. That is a choice you must make. The chamber fell silent, then Rail stood. I was the first coalition officer to meet the humans, he said. I was terrified. Every instinct in my body told me to run, but I watched them fight. I watched them study our enemy with curiosity instead of fear. I watched them rebuild what was broken. And I learned that strength without compassion is just cruelty, but compassion without strength is just wishful thinking. Humans have both. He looked directly at Wilson. I trust them. I trust them because they have earned it. They bled for us. They died for us. They stayed to help us rebuild. If that is not worthy of our trust, then nothing is. Triss stood next. I vote for full membership. Horvath stood. I vote for full membership. Kren stood. I vote for full membership. One by one, the council members stood. Not all of them. Some species still feared what humanity represented, but enough stood. More than enough. High Chancellor Vorn raised his hand. By majority vote, humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Coalition. Welcome, Admiral Wilson. Welcome to your new home. Wilson nodded once, and for the first time since Rail had met her, he saw her smile without it being a threat display. It was genuine, warm. Later, Rail found Pip on one of the lower decks. The young soldier was teaching human combat tactics to a group of coalition recruits. Jane Lewis was there too, correcting stances and encouraging the nervous students. How does it feel, Rail asked Pip, teaching others what you learned? Pip thought about it. It feels right, Commander. The humans taught me that fear is not weakness. They taught me that anyone can be strong if someone believes in them. Now I teach others. That is how it spreads. Rail looked out at the stars, at the human warships patrolling coalition borders, their presence both terrifying and reassuring. The galaxy had called for reinforcements and gotten monsters, but they were the right kind of monsters, the kind that protected instead of preyed, the kind that built instead of destroyed, the kind that would stand beside them against whatever darkness came next.